This title, is it like Beetlejuice? You know, you say it 3 times, bodies, bodies, bodies. No, it's not.
Just say it!
What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. A24 has a brand new film. It's called Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Really good cast. Pete Davidson's in it. He's been in the news. We're going to talk about this film, whether or not it lived up to the hype, and let's do it. When a group of rich 20-somethings plan a hurricane party at a remote family mansion, a party game turns deadly in the fresh and funny look at backstabbing, fake friends, and one party gone very, very wrong. This film stars Amanda Stenberg, Maria Bakalova, Pete Davidson, Lee Pace, and it is rated R. It's definitely not one you want to take your kids to, even though this is kind of all about Generation Z. It features violence, bloody images, drug use, sexual references, pervasive language, all of the stuff. Now, you expect that from a slasher, and I went into this movie thinking it was going to be a slasher. That's how it was marketed. It's A24. Now, they will occasionally swerve on their trailers, but for the most part, it looks like a straightforward movie, and that's exactly what it was not. Now, this isn't a bad thing, right? As it plays like a murder mystery instead of a slasher. There is slashing occasionally throughout this film, but not necessarily happening in the way that you think. And there's another word that I saw briefly thrown around on Twitter, but the reviews that I've seen, and I've just caught glances on social media, I've not actually sat down and watched a review yet, for the most part, consider this a full-on slasher, and I guess from a certain perspective, you could look at it like that, but I don't see it as that. I see it more as a take on today's generation, Generation Z, with all of the cliched lines and conversations and you know, some characters in there with that me mentality, some arguments that spawn from that. I think a lot of people are going to have an issue with the dialogue just because of the way they talk to each other. It was kind of like, you know, it's hard to fall in love with these characters, but they're playing it that way. In my opinion, they're playing it that way purposefully, right? These characters are supposed to somewhat come across as annoying or hard-headed or filled with rage because each individual one is going through something, and we get shades and nods of that. It doesn't fully flesh out every single person, but we have an idea as to what they are struggling with, and this all comes to play as we're trying to figure out, okay, what is actually happening, who is at fault, and why are people dying? I strayed away from my thought. The word I was speaking of earlier is satire. It's a very satirical movie at its core, but it doesn't play like a full-on comedy. Comedy and satire, they're two different things, right? Satire usually features comedic beats, but it's trying to play on the actions of these characters and mirror or parallel everything happening in this movie to the way things could happen in real life, whether it's cringe or however you're feeling in these moments, in these situations. And those are things that I did not entirely respond to. I didn't get fully caught up in some of the conversations in this movie. And I think part of it is trying to evoke that feeling in me that it just did not fully capture. And again, just changing up my expectations, which is not a bad thing, but when you're expecting to get a lot more blood and gore and carnage than what you actually get, the feeling at the end of the day is going to be disappointment, but that doesn't necessarily mean I didn't like what they provided, because I found this script and really this entire screenplay to be somewhat inventive, creative. It kept me on my toes. I thought I had a guess at the beginning of the movie as to how this was all going to play out, and it's somewhat played out in that way, but there was one or two twists or turns where I said, you know what? All right. Helena Rain, who I'm not completely familiar with, does a nice job of setting us out on this journey by introducing the game to us. Bodies, bodies, bodies. And how are they going to play it? What is this game? Have you heard of this game? I've never heard of this game. But the movie plays out, and every character in this situation is handling it in a very self-destructive way. And this film plays on that idea until the very end, where it's going to have some people walking out of the theater just not on the same wavelength as I think the intended audience for this, or those who are going to see it as it really is. And they're going to walk out going, that was stupid. That was really stupid. That's what A24 tends to do sometimes. I never really found that one character that I fully gravitated towards the series of scenes that are supposed to build this ridiculous amount of tension. They build that tension, but I wasn't really on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was more so being fascinated with how this was playing with our characters as opposed to feeling the thrills and chills that maybe I expected to feel. Again, it's hard to play that out in my head at the end of the day, so I did enjoy the experience overall, but I did want a bit more emotionally, and some of these supposed to be cringe moments were just too overly cringe for me, and some of this dialogue I wasn't fully jiving with. Jiving? Is that a term? I don't know. Regardless, I still respect it. Austin, you're not supposed to like these characters. It's a movie about a bunch of rich young adults that are just kind of taking over this mansion and doing whatever they want to do. Yeah, I understand that. And there were really likable and redeeming qualities. Maria Bakalova specifically, oh my God, she's incredible. Well, the core two that we start out with, I loved both of those characters, the way they were written, the most dynamic characters in the entire film. Pete Davidson was entertaining. The overall cast did a great job. It was hard to find that one character for me. Before I give you my score, what is your favorite A24 horror film specifically? And did you enjoy this movie? If you liked this video, be sure to drop that thumbs up down below and leave those comments. This is a film that plays with your expectations and delivers a drastically different experience. The characters are hard to root for, but the journey progresses in a fascinating way. I wanted to love this movie, but I ended up really liking this movie. I'm going a 71% for Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. Is this one of those films that you're going to be checking out this weekend? It's definitely one that's going to have a conversation revolving around it when you walk out of the theater, and sometimes those are the best. See you soon.